It's 7 a.m. on June 6, 1944. The Channel waters are churning in a relentless gale, and the sky overhead is a swirling canvas of slate-gray clouds. Lieutenant Colonel James Earl Rudder, commander of the 2nd Ranger Battalion, stands at the bow of his landing craft, water lashing across the deck as he peers ahead at the tall, forbidding cliffs known as Pointe du Hoc. Over the roar of the engines, the hiss of ocean spray, and the distant thump of naval artillery, he hears a dismayed shout behind him. "Sir, the ropes are too soaked. They've taken on too much water." As if on cue, enemy grenades detonate against the rocky base of the cliff, spraying shrapnel and gravel in all directions. Dirt and dust rain from above like a grim hail. Rudder's mind flashes back 5 months earlier to a narrow briefing room in London, where he and his officers had pored over maps showing the Normandy coastline. Back then, they had been told about the ultimate goal: launch Operation Overlord, D-Day, to smash Hitler's Atlantic Wall once and for all. The briefing had emphasized one deadly obstacle: 6 powerful French 150mm cannons stationed atop Pointe du Hoc. These trophies of war, seized by the Germans, could strike both Omaha and Utah beaches from over 20,000 yards away, inflicting catastrophic losses. If those guns weren't knocked out, the Allies' great amphibious assault might fail. That day in London, an officer had pointed to the map with a gloved hand. "Lieutenant Colonel Rudder, you and your Rangers will land here at Pointe du Hoc," he'd said. "Be warned, you'll face a 100-foot vertical cliff, near impenetrable fortifications, and at least 200 German defenders. The area around the gun battery is heavily mined, wrapped in barbed wire, and bristling with machine gun emplacements. We need you to destroy these guns and then hold the cliff until reinforcements arrive, even if that means fighting off multiple counterattacks. It's likely to be the hardest mission you or your men have ever undertaken." Rudder had accepted the challenge without hesitation. Now, on this June morning, as mortar shells scream overhead and bullets whip through the salty air, he wonders if the plan is already unraveling. D-Day proper began hours earlier, with hundreds of Allied ships massing in the Channel. On board, the 2nd and 5th Ranger Battalions mustered in cramped compartments, each Ranger weighed down by gear: rifles, packs, grappling hooks, rope ladders, grenades. At dawn, they transferred to 12 LCA, landing craft assault vessels, and 4 amphibious DUKW trucks, nicknamed Ducks. Their objective: surmount the formidable cliff at Pointe du Hoc, silence the German guns, and hold the position until Lieutenant Colonel Schneider and the 5th Battalion could reinforce them. But nature dealt them a punishing hand. A strong cross-current and gusting winds hammered the small LCAs as soon as they peeled off from the larger flotilla. "Hang on tight!" someone yelled over the drone of the engines and the crash of the waves. "We picked one hell of a day for an amphibious assault." Rudder could see the men around him tensing, each bracing for an impact that felt inevitable. Within minutes, a particularly savage wave swamped one LCA, sending it and its crew flailing into the sea. Another craft, carrying precious ammunition and supplies, vanished beneath the water soon after, leaving the Rangers short on explosives, rope, and even basic medical gear. Visibility worsened. As the Rangers approached the French coastline, Allied bombers had earlier dropped a smokescreen to obscure German gunners' view, a partial blessing that now obscured the Rangers' own navigation. When the smoke dissipated enough for Rudder to spot landmarks, he realized with sinking dread that they'd drifted almost a mile east of their planned touchdown point. "Pilot, can you swing us west?" Rudder shouted. "Aye, sir, but it'll be rough," came the reply. At this juncture, the men in the landing craft might have wondered about alternative tactics. Is there another way to command such a perilous operation? Well, if you're curious about strategy on the high seas, or if you fancy naval battles of your own, we have a sponsor that puts you in the captain's chair. World of Warships is a free-to-play game where you can helm one of over 600 historically detailed vessels. Each month brings fresh missions, regular updates, and game modes that challenge you to outmaneuver, outgun, and outthink your enemies. And right now, to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day, World of Warships invites players to experience brand new content inspired by the largest amphibious assault in history. This includes exclusive D-Day themed events, new missions, and unique customizations that pay homage to June 6, 1944. Use our code DAY80 when you download World of Warships, and you'll net 200 doubloons, 1 million credits, a 7-day premium account, a free ship, and special D-Day missions after 9 battles. Don't forget, you can also play on Console 1. Recreate history and test your naval savvy with World of Warships. Back in the real war zone, the Rangers' battered flotilla finally reached Pointe du Hoc's rocky shoreline. Mortars howled overhead, shells plunked into the choppy surf, and machine gun bullets sparked against the LCA hulls. At 300 meters out, the German defenders unleashed a storm of gunfire. One 20mm shell punched through a UKW, ripping it apart and sending it plunging under. Yet the other craft pressed on. Engines revved, ramps slammed onto the stones, and the men leaped out, submerging up to their knees in icy surf as they slogged ashore beneath withering enemy fire. Over to the east, the UKWs carrying London Fire Brigade ladders, a desperate measure to ensure they could scale the cliff, lurched onto the beach. The ground was chaos. Crater-pocked sand, scattered shingle, razor wire barriers, and half-buried mines. "Keep moving," an officer yelled. "Don't clump up. Spread out. Watch for snipers." Gunshots cracked overhead, and fragments of rock pinged off helmets. Rocket grapnels, intended to anchor at the cliff's summit, fizzled or struck the cliff face and tumbled back down, weighted by waterlogged ropes. Scowling, Rudder sought cover behind a chunk of concrete. The entire plan hinged on scaling the cliff quickly, but the climbing gear was betraying them at the worst possible moment. As grenades rained down, it seemed for an instant there might be no way up. Then a distant Allied ship fired another salvo from its naval guns, pounding the cliff edge and forcing German troops to withdraw a few crucial yards. When the smoke and earth settled, Rudder glimpsed a large mound of debris heaped against the cliff base. "That's our ramp," he decided, rallying his men. "Get the ladders," he roared. Amid the mayhem, Rangers lugged over the massive sections of ladder, each measuring 16 feet. They worked in pairs and trios, snapping them together as bullets kicked up sand around their feet. Under covering fire from Browning automatic rifles and carbines, the Rangers hoisted the ladder against the battered cliff. Technician 5th grade George J. Pudzek set his teeth and scaled the final rung, becoming the first to reach the summit. Encouraged, the rest swiftly followed. Meanwhile, out at sea, Lieutenant Colonel Schneider, commanding the 5th Battalion, waited in vain for Rudder's signal. Time was slipping away, and from Schneider's vantage point, there was no sign of success, no flares, no radio message. Unaware that Rudder was delayed, Schneider stuck to the orders. If Rudder didn't signal on schedule, the 5th Battalion would divert to Omaha Beach and fight their way to Pointe du Hoc from inland, linking up eventually, if at all. Back on the clifftop, Rudder and his men found themselves in a labyrinth of German trenches, bunkers, and barbed wire. The Rangers dispersed in small squads, clearing each position at bayonet or grenade range. Casualties mounted quickly on both sides, but the Rangers pressed on. Rudder caught a bullet grazing his thigh, and though bleeding, he refused evacuation. They encountered the gun emplacements, the reason they were here, and discovered with shock that the massive 150 mm cannons weren't in place. "Dummies!" First Sergeant Leonard Lommel shouted. "They've hauled the real cannons somewhere else." Intelligence had indicated the guns would be aimed at the beaches, but the Germans, anticipating an Allied strike, had moved them inland. Still, the Rangers had orders. Take and hold Pointe du Hoc at all costs. Setting up a makeshift command post in a captured German bunker, Rudder radioed for supplies. The reply was grim: no reinforcements available. With no relief in sight, Rudder dispatched patrols inland to hunt down the missing artillery. Lommel and Staff Sergeant Jack E. Kuhn led a squad through thick hedgerows, searching for telltale signs of the heavy cannons. Sure enough, they found multiple artillery pieces parked behind a hedgerow, manned by only a skeleton crew. Acting decisively, Lommel used thermite grenades on the recoil mechanisms, disabling the guns. Now began the hardest part, holding onto the cliff. Throughout the night of June 6th and into June 7th, the Germans launched multiple counterattacks. Under a canopy of darkness, they crept close, using whistles and muffled roll calls to coordinate. Each time, the Rangers, although dangerously low on ammo, managed to repel the assault. Machine guns flared, grenades exploded in spectacular bursts, and mortar rounds rained onto the battered ground. The cost was high. Men were lost, wounded, or captured. By dawn, on June 7th, Rudder and only 90 capable Rangers remained at the line. Yet the anticipated all-out German onslaught never arrived. Either the defenders were stretched thin or unnerved by the Rangers' ferocious defense. Finally, on June 8th, main American forces broke through to reinforce Pointe du Hoc. Colonel Rudder had been wounded 3 separate times, but he refused to leave until he knew his men were safe. Out of the original attacking force, 152 were wounded, and 77 would never leave Pointe du Hoc. Their bravery, grit, and sacrifice under impossible odds remain legendary. Today, a memorial stands perched at the cliff's edge, paying tribute to their extraordinary courage. Visitors can still gaze out over the rocky heights, imagining the Rangers' perilous climb and the thunder of battle echoing across the channel. If you're ready to craft your own naval legends, remember to click the link below and use our code DEITIETH to grab your World of Warships Starter Pack, 200 doubloons, 1 million credits, 7 days of premium account, a free ship, and special D-Day missions once you complete 9 battles. Test your leadership on the high seas, outmaneuver foes, and relive some of history's most dramatic moments, just like the Allies did on D-Day. Only this time, you're the commander,